Hey folks, it's George Leoniak here at New Geometry, and I'm back with another video. Very excited to be following up on the Krystal Spiral. Recently, I did a video with Britt Edwards called Getting Crystal Clear, and that's getting a lot of views. So I haven't done a solo video on the Krystal Spiral Kathara Grid for quite some time, but they're really some of my most popular videos. And after that interview with Britt, I thought it would really be great for me to revisit all that material with a completely new understanding and much more in detail understanding of sacred geometry. And I'm really going to look at the golden spiral and golden ratio and talk about fivefold symmetry throughout this presentation and compare and contrast some of these differences and similarities to the Krystal Spiral. So viewers who are very much into the Krystal Spiral or golden ratio or whatever, this is definitely an open-ended approach. So continue to keep an open mind as you watch what I'm about to go through. And I'm looking forward to some interesting conversations about this. So let me share my screen. And it might be a long presentation today. There's quite, I think I have over 30, maybe 37 slides, but some of them are going to be quick. And at the end of it, I'm going to zoom in. I've done this in some other videos. I'm going to open up the iPad and bring you into one of these spirals here at the end of this video to show how infinitely it will go into the center. Now, one of the things with the Krystal Spiral, this is here on the left, the Kathara Grid. It doesn't have any golden ratio circles. And if you're familiar with my channel, I really work with the golden ratio circle templates that I call the golden circle templates from different perspectives. And I'll show you those in a moment. But what I discovered this past week, I said, let me revisit the Krystal Spiral, which is basically on 45-degree rotated squares nested within inside one another. And I said, well, I'm going to do that same thing with one of my golden circle templates and nest the squares and the counter-rotated. Now, we'll talk about what these shapes are in just a moment. They are related to geometric structures in the Platonic solids. But one of the arguments early on that I saw with the Krystal Spiral is that this spiral, the golden spiral, wouldn't return to the source, meaning the center of the diagram, right? Well, I figured out how to do that quite easily within the golden circle infinite expansion template that I'm showing you here on the right, and it does, and this is what we'll zoom into at the end. Right here where these red lines cross, this spiral will emanate infinitely into the center of this this diagram right here at that little point down in the middle, just like this will. Now, these are drawings, so it's really even with this one or this one, when you continue to connect the circles, these circles on this one can go in forever too. So there really is no center point. It just depends where you want to call zero. This will reach down to the Planck threshold, very small scale, super small scale we have. And this, I'm assuming, meets at zero or there too. So let's just talk a little bit about what the difference is between these two circle patterns. Now, the Krystal Spiral pattern, this pattern of these circles has been around for a very, very, very long time. Because basically we're doing a 1-to-1 ratio here of creating two between the 1 and the 1. So basically, here's one circle, here's the larger circle that contains it, and we've got another circle of the same size, 1-to-1. Those are 1-to-1, and then that is the larger circle. And that scaling of this 1-to-1 creating the two will continue all the way through all of these circles, as small as you want to go to as large as you want to go. Now, when I introduced this pattern, and these templates that I'll show you are really new. I mean, there's not really any patterns that infinitely scale this, at least from these perspectives. The Islamic art was very much was doing this with the pentagonal view, but I've done it with the hexagon view and the square view that I call this. And here our next smallest circle within is, let's call that 1. And then the next circle that then also meets in the center, just like these here, right? 1, 1, 1, and 1. This is the 0.618 remainder. It's a bigger circle because it's 1.618 all the way, but we have the 0.618 between the difference between. So that's the ratio of 0.618. Now that was a scaling factor that will infinitely scale all the way down 1 to 1.618, just like, in our fingers and hands and arms. And I'm going to show you at the end the universal level, galactic level, biological level, down all the way to the quantum level, et cetera. So I have a slide for you at the end to just show that the golden ratio is very much part of our universe. So this also relates to Dan Winter's work within the infinite non-destructive compression. I have a video with Dan that I've done, and have other videos about the star child and the star mother, his star mother model about infinite non-destructive compression. Well, that's how these models came to be. They came about through my interest in working with sacred geometry that you can draw to figure out patterns that actually mimic the scaling, that if we were able to expand these circles to an infinite cosmological level, down from the 0 point of the Planck unit, this would be our universe, one view of our universe from this square view. So these are quite new patterns, and this is what it looks like. And you can do multiple circles within this. Any of these points, basically, any place can be a center. This could be a new origin, basically, from here, of a new concentric set of circles. So we're just really focusing on one. So where is the one source point? Maybe in every single little atom at the quantum scale. So here's just a quick overview of just how I did these infinite scaling patterns with the Rhombic Tricontahedron as the overlay, because that form really does contain all the Platonic solids and many of the others that are within it. It has 30 rhombic faces. This is what that infinite scaling. So this is a Rhombic Tricontahedron within a tricontahedron within all the way down. Same thing from this view. Same thing from this. So this is your hexagon view, I call it, square view, and pentagon view. And these are actually three-dimensional geometric forms. And just so everybody knows, if you're not familiar with the Rhombic Tricontahedron as a form, well, this is it right here, the 30 faces. There's the pentagon face. And it's a compound of both the icosahedron, which is this one over here, the 20-sided D20, and our dodecahedron, which is the 12-sided. So these two edges are meeting here, if they're overlapping, and creating a new form, creating those rhombic faces. So just a little basic primer on geometry, although for many that's not really the basics, because this is kind of where we're headed. I mean, most people are very familiar with the Platonic solids, or people who are into sacred geometry, but I believe the Rhombic Tricontahedron is a really next step in our evolution of working with the other forms and seeing how they fit into these implosive patterns and really do model geometric structure of our universe. So here are the templates. And the thing with the sacred geometry that I'm presenting is that it is really very much unified. All three of these scales, the three of the views, I mean, are right now in this pattern. And I'm going to show you that all I have to do is pull them out one at a time. For instance, here is the Pentagon view, right? There's that one. Who's up next? There is our hexagonal view, right? And here is, it's a bigger template view, but I nested the circles there. There's the square view, right? So we're really not working, if you're a sacred geometer, and this is really nice because you're not working with these things. Let's just say it this way: when I first started working with sacred geometry, I didn't understand how these views were connected at all. I had to connect these dots for myself, and I didn't see how they were connected at infinite scales, right? Everything was really around the flower of life, and then we had these other views that you could draw designs with, basically. But that's really changed. I mean, these are some new patterns. I believe that, like I said, the Islamic art worked a lot with this. And of course, I've put that into this flower of life, seed of life pattern, and also done it with this square view. And all the geometric forms are within this, right? So they're really unified, just as I had brought them apart. Let's put them all back together. So if you're a sacred geometer and you're drawing, really all you need to work with is phi ratio circles, and then just go about different techniques of whether you want to go to tenfold or fivefold or fourfold, or twofold symmetry, or the hexagonal view of the threefold. There are 6 lines of symmetry. It's all right there, and that's really sweet. So let's see, we have, this is now, let's get into the golden spiral here, okay? Because now we're getting back on track with the comparison of the spirals that we're working with. So here it is going into the nested tricontahedron, right? So with just one extra circles, because I wanted to outline the golden rectangle, because the golden spiral is in the golden rectangle. And of course, this would be a smoother spiral, really. It's not just these quarter arcs of circles, but as a geometer, that's the way we draw it. And here's the crossing of the lines, which are going to the center. And now this is going to go through the tricontahedrons, because they're getting successively smaller in phi ratio. There's only 6 here, so it's pretty limited perspective. But this is now, you have to picture the spiral, not flat. I've got some images to help us out with that. That is going to be actually like spiraling in, towards you, or, away from you, okay? And it's following the implosion of the tricontahedron. Now, while I was making these, I discovered that this whole view of this tricontahedron is basically golden rectangles. This is a golden rectangle here. There's another golden rectangle right here. The whole form here, from here, where's the next square? Oh, back over here, over to here. This would be a full complete square here. That little section right there that's a golden rectangle right there. So this whole design, this whole pattern of these tricontahedrons are little tiny spirals. I could spiral nearly any spot within this and place golden circles on it. So it's just really amazing how that works out. Now, I took out the tricontahedrons because I really wanted to just see how those squares that are successively getting smaller, let's just say in this image, they could be getting larger too, but they're continually getting smaller, and they're following this golden ratio scaling. And these golden rectangles are actually following the progression of these smaller and smaller squares. So if you were to just look at a golden rectangle, you see that it always shows up at the same point on these squares. And I'm able to actually draw this even if I took out all these squares, because I know where the connecting points are on the circles themselves. So the circles themselves will give us the spiral. The squares just make it a little bit more obvious and easier for us to see. So now I took out all the circles because, there's a lot going on in those drawings, I realize. It's definitely a more complex picture than our crystal spiral, which I'll show you again. And it has a lot more circles to it. And there's more, different size circles going on, and the scaling ratio of the golden squares and the golden rectangle line. So there's a lot going on. But here's that golden rectangle, the squares, and now here's the tricontahedrons that I've pulled out separately. And I'll show you that this nicely just fits over, because remember, this tricontahedron is basically inside, I'm showing you here, as if it were in one cube, right? So we can look at each of these squares that are going into this spiral is actually cubes, right? Of just one cube successively compressing, getting smaller and smaller and smaller, following that spiral. And that one cube will go around that tricontahedron. So just picture this cube and this tricontahedron, in the square orientation. This would fit right into this box, just like that. But remember, this is a one cube view of things here that I'm showing with these cubes. This tricontahedron is actually part of 5-fold symmetry and 5 cubes. And that's a really important leap. And after doing this little analysis, I started to realize that the Metatron's cube, which I talk about, is also very much focused on the one cube perspective and not 5, because it doesn't include the phi ratio 5-fold symmetry, because those 5 forms are off. And I started to think that, well, maybe the crystal spiral, as it's being presented, is also just a one cube octahedron view of things. And because they don't have the golden ratio within this, so these are often thought to be based on an octahedron and cube. And I've talked about this with Britt, but I really think that my earlier videos on the Krystal Spiral and the Kathara Grid may be some of the first to really introduce this kind of octahedral structure as it relates to this cube. I don't believe that's correct, but at least I know that my videos really show it with the geometric models of the octahedron, how these can be octahedron cube compounds, just like this is an icosahedron compound, that are going all the way down into the center here. Now, so I started thinking, well, this is really a view of the one cube octahedron compound view. And this is now our fivefold view, and we are doing the golden spiral. So I know there's so much comparison between the Krystal Spiral and the golden phi ratio. This is not a Fibonacci spiral, so we're not going, 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 2 = 3, 2 and 3 = 5, right? That's how, nature is using that pattern. We can count it in different things out in nature. This is really the golden spirals that are going on based specifically on that ratio. And, this one is thought to be based on this. I really don't know what the originator of this, the Ashiana Dean, thought these shapes were when she made them. Maybe she did say they were octahedron cubes. I really haven't read a lot of the material, but I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of corrections on all this. But this one here is no doubt for me based on the 5-cube compound. It's also based on a 5 octahedron compound. And this now actually contains all the Platonic solids and many, 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 many other geometric forms. It could either be the Archimedean or Catalan solids. Different truncations, new forms can be created from this. All sorts of things are in this. So like I said, I'm not, overly doing a big comparison, and I have a nice wrap up of how we're going to close this up to see how these two may be related more fundamentally. But I do wonder, this one is said to be, this Krystal Spiral Kathara Grid is said to be the natural way that the most natural organic version of our universe, or and this is some sort of distorted manipulation over here on the right? Phi is bad news. Adding the golden spiral is no good. This is what we hear. But I wanted to show you in this, and this is important. I completely eliminated that hexagonal perspective from this, so you can't. Person who's in Krystal Spiral cannot say, hey, it's due to the Metatronics hexagon view, all right? I'm doing everything, as I showed you prior, that my perspective here is a unified view. All these three that I pulled out are all based on this three perspectives unified through the divine proportion. So, this is what this is. This is from that view now. So we can't say it's a hexagonal perspective anymore. And these are three-dimensional shapes that are within this. And this golden spiral is going to the center point of this diagram, just like this one would. And so, okay, anyway, those are just some thoughts on this. And I don't know how the Krystal Spiral, which I did pick up a few new people on there. Remember, received this in an open mind, new subscribers it is. So if you're here watching this, thank you for watching it. And please, I look forward to hearing your comments about this in the comments on the video. Okay, so that's one whole section. It could have been just one video on itself. I actually have a few segments like this because I'm really just going to go all out with this one. And so here's one thing that is important to talk about, and I do have a 3D model that I'll have to show you on the break, or maybe I will pop back and forth here and reshare. If you take an octahedron, if you take an octahedron, right? This is an octahedron. This is in the golden circle seat of life, and of course, because it's in an icosahedron, which is going to be this large structure around it, this large hexagon. it has to be rotated. And I've talked about this in the Metatron's cube video. So, hey, I'm definitely, pointing a lot of things out about Metatron's cube that aren't really working either. So I really don't have a side that I'm on here. I'm just very much interested in understanding what sacred geometry's story is to tell. And this is what it told me. It told me, well, this hexagon of this Star of David, which is an octahedron in this, right? And that's the 8-sided form for new folks who are not super familiar with all these forms. That's your octahedron, 8 sides, the 8-sided pyramid structure, 2 side by side, stacked on top of one another. And so if you extend those lines out in phi proportion, so basically this blue line that I'm showing you here, that I'm scrolling over, well, if that's 1, so let's say I've extended that line out 1. Now that's in 3-dimensional space we have to be thinking. This edge right here, actually this is the 2D version of it because this is a flat equilateral triangle. That's going to go out to that hexagon edge. So that's a flat line, and that's the 0.618. So if you do that all the way around this octahedron in just 12 of the directions, you will create, and this is the model of it, and I'll show you in just a moment, you'll create the icosahedron around that octahedron. See these little lines coming out here? Those are giving us 5-fold symmetry from one octahedron, okay? And there's an icosahedron that's inside inside that octahedron that's inside that, okay? Inside the big icosahedron. I know that's a bit of a tongue twister, but I'll do a better job when I pause the model. I'll show you the model in just a minute. In fact, let's just do it. So here we go. This is the big icosahedron, right? The 12 sides, 20 sides, excuse me. And now here's our 8-sided octahedron. It's the teal colored right in the center. And inside that, the blue again is dividing the edge of that to create the icosahedron that is contained within that. This is all going to become important in the slideshow in a minute, and I'm going to compare it all to the Kathara Grid stuff in a moment. So and this is really interesting stuff coming up. So if I extend that line out of this edge in phi proportion all the way from one icosahedron, if one octahedron does that, then I get 5-fold symmetry. But really, this is not one octahedron by itself. It's actually a compound of 5. So this is really the icosahedron at the center of this. We're just showing it as a 1 octahedron, but it's really should be 5 to create this structure. But this is just one way of looking at it, okay? So let's go back to the sharing of the screen. So now that you've got that, oh, wait, let's not share just yet, sorry. I want to show you one more thing. Let's unshare. That's from that view. So let's just take a look at it from this view, because we're gonna be working in this perspective, because this is the square view of it, right? So what you're going to be seeing in these drawings is this line, and then we're going to be looking at the icosahedron, and there's our octahedron inside it, right? It's the square, and there is our icosahedron in there, and you could see the way the points match up on this triangle and divide that edge. And this is very important that this point hits here. It shows you this is actually connected to this form, and it will infinitely expand and compress, and these octahedron will be in this and continually doing that throughout that infinite expansion or compression, whichever way you want to go. But this is a unified structure, okay? So let's do some comparison and see how this plays out with the Kathara Grid. Share screen. Now, I don't really know if this next part is going to really fit, like if this is more evidence for why the Kathara Grid or the Katharists, the people who are into chelantic science, if this is going to actually support more of why they feel that the phi ratio phase locks or distorts this natural pattern. Because when I take the structure of the square and the octahedron, the blue is this octahedron, and this is an octahedron, and I send out those lines, right? So this is that octahedron in 1 to 0.618, and it's meeting out on the red icosahedron. And that should, in this model over here on the right, which I call is based on my Phi Yantra diagram, I'll show you an image in that in a minute. But when I extend that out, here's our octahedron, and there is the triangle on the face of the octahedron that is just going to show up 8 times because there's only 8 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 4 more sides, red triangles inside those triangles that divided that line in phi proportion on that big triangle, which is the octahedron, okay? This is some complex things to visualize and think about. I hope that the diagram and the models are making sense, but 8 triangular faces on this triangular face of the icosahedron is fitting inside this one, and it's tilted because it's in phi proportion to divide that edge into phi. That's what I'm trying to show you in this. There's our little octahedron. There's our little icosahedron down in that. This one infinitely goes on and on and on. When I lock in the pattern of counter-rotating squares, right? Square, octa, square, octa, square, octa, all the way down, then all of a sudden when I do my icosahedron, it pokes out of the sides, right? The icosahedron doesn't fit in there anymore. So I don't know if that's like support, because I think a lot of people who are into the chelontics really say that the icosahedron phase locks, that's a term I heard recently this past week, this whole organic natural structure. But is that natural organic structure, or is this the natural organic structure over here? So here it is again. Here's the icosahedron, because this will imminently compress, as Dan Winter says, or Nassim Harriman says. I got a slide coming up of how this relates to universal structure, where this all of a sudden, if I just stay with those square within square, and I do that icosa, I'm repeating myself, it will continue to pop out. So this is just 1 octa, 1 icosa. This is 1 octa, 2 octahedron here, and 1 square, and there's the icosahedron. So it was really tough to draw this, because these points are way out, because it doesn't have phi ratio. All right, so let's do this out of multiple levels. And I want you to feel into if we're working with phi ratio in this pattern, what feels like draws you in. I mean, that's what the geometry, at least Britt and I were saying, have an open mind. What draws you in? I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything here. Yet you see that this setup, the only thing this really had interesting was when I draw the icosahedron line here, it intersects the cube, right? But it doesn't really touch it in 3-dimensional space. It just happened to be kind of an interesting artifact of the geometry that this red line will divide right here at phi proportion with the cube that's down in here. But the icosahedron itself continually pokes out around that as we go square, black square, blue square, black square, blue square, black square, all the way into the center. Now here are the phi ratio squares with these icosas, with the octahedrons. These are the blue octahedrons. These are still all 3-dimensional objects. And we're going in and 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 in, all the way, way down in there. And it just harmonically, I would say, non-destructively compresses, as Dan Winter says. It's because this is just every zone model or every other build that I've done. This is how it works. These 3D models, I'm showing you how it works out. I don't know if it works out that way in nature. Well, obviously it does to a large variety of degree, because we see that phi ratio pattern all around us. Okay, so I want to bring in one thing that was way back in a lot of videos in my early days. I talked about the soul star, and I love that form. There was a golden soul star, but I called it that this week at least, because this is what the golden soul star is. And really it is what that form is. So this is what happens. So we got that octahedron, blue. And if I connect this line over to the cube, then I had that little bulge that's on the side here, right? It kind of looks like it's going to be a line that's bent over here to connect those dots. And that actually is a form, that is this form that I'm holding. And that will be at every single one of those progressional levels. It's right here. So I've just done one large one. So I want you to see, like this, all this looks like empty space inside here, right? There's not much going on, but really what I'm holding here has all of this infinite compression going on into this one little structure. I mean, it could be an octahedron or a dodecahedron, whatever I want to hold, it will be the same. But it was just an interesting thing that this is the pattern that shows up. This is the connecting form that has the octahedron, which is this line going through, and these little points would be the cube if I connected the lines across. And as a solid, it looks like this. And it looks like the Taraxis hexahedron, which is the square view version of this, without phi ratio, I mean. So that's what it would be like, looking like that. So let me just move that out of the way, just so you could see just what that one looks all by itself. And there is the icosahedron within the blue octahedron. And that could be truncated to look something like this. Now, I've got a lot of these. I'm putting out a bunch of models I haven't shared yet, but I'm very interested in sharing all these at some point in another video. But there's just too much to do all in one. Okay, so that's a kind of overall basic summary of just comparing those two. And we're going to come back around to that, but I want to just run with this phi-based model for just a moment and just bring in some of the other things that I looked at that I wanted to get to in the video with Britt, but really never had a chance to, because we did go for 2 hours on that one. So in the dodecahedron, which is the 12-sided shape, right? There is, this is how the spirals work within the dodecahedron. They funnel into each of the 12 faces, making these cones. And there's actually a circle within that pentagon face. So I really want to just describe how the spirals are working in these forms in the dodecahedron, and just show that the spiral is part of the form. So within the pentagon face, this red pentagon, it's this circle between those that has a very specific angle. These dotted blue lines going into the center follow a 63.4 degree angle. And that's going to be important. This is now, if I rotated this dodeca to the top view, and we're looking at this crisscross of red and blue spiral lines as we look at it from the top, okay, making these golden ratio spiral. Now, there's probably more twist to that, because maybe I tried to make it, you know, an organic style like you might see on a sunflower or something more like that. So there's two views of golden spirals that help me to create, now this is old material, to create these funnel-like spirals. And the way I did this is basically I looked at our spiral and said, well, this is what it looks like if we're looking straight down at it. How about if we looked at it as cubes that are stacked and connecting? So this would spiral kind of goes down. You'd have to stop and pause these videos, but you'd have to picture this starting in the upper right, swinging all the way back down to the bottom left corner, and then meeting the back corner of this one and spiraling towards you. And then that one comes down and spiral over and meets this one. And then that spirals back down and comes over and meets over here. So this is really, it just looks like I took a zigzag, I just did a little zigzag here, right? Like a sine wave almost, but that sine wave is actually a spiral. And we look at this 2D image here and think it's just someone just drew on a chalkboard or something, but this is what, one way of looking at this is that it's a spiral that is, you know, has a very steep angle to it actually. Just showing you that that is relating to, these are what those spirals are right here, and I put them into the funnel. So here's just, this is another way to look at it. It's more of an angle perspective to maybe help show how those cubes are connecting. So another one, pause the video, do a connect the dots, keep checking over here. So for instance, front right, swooping up and back through to the back corner. That's at the back corner of this one over here. And that swings up. This is really coming towards you now and comes up, it hits right over here and all the way through. So a nice ram's horn, let's just call it, you know, spiral that's going along like that. Okay, we're going to switch gears again. I've got a few little pieces to build up here. So that remember the angle into the dodecahedron, the 63.4, right? Well, this is part of this Phi Yantra diagram that I did. Got a whole video on it, a Phi Yantra, awesome video. It was the first signal that I was onto something with all this. So I took that cube, I did all these lines and discovered this template in here, which actually is this pattern, which contains, there's the design, fold it up, you create the pyramid and square the circle all at once. This is the phi ratio pyramid, but that's the flat template of it. So it's right there. But hey, check it out. This is the awesome part. This little triangle that I'm flipping up and down right here. Oh, that angle at the top there just happens to be 63.4 from base, the two bases up to the top. So that's 63.4. 63.4, remember, that's the same cone. You know, if I was to rotate this cone around, right, that shape, that little triangle, if I spun it around, the base of it would make a circle, and that's the same circle that goes into the pentagons. And that's what the pyramid, phi ratio pyramid face is. So here it is. I take that little diagram, I just picked up the whole thing in like a flat 2D image just like this and just plopped it into our dodecahedron, and that edge goes straight down into the center and it's right around that circle. And now I want to relate this to the infinite compression infinite implosion model that I made and talked about with Dan Winter in a video that relates to that infinite non-destructive compression moving down to the center. Here it is. This is what each of these dodecahedron faces are, and they all match up and meet and line up and guide to this little point down in here following this 63.4 degree angle, and there's all spirals in each of these faces going down into the center, and it's actually a pyramid face. It's one face of the pyramid, which is very, very close to our Great Egyptian Giza pyramid. And that's what's happening here with the rhombic tricontahedron implosion pattern. So it's most easy to see it in this view because this is actually where the Pentagon view is. So this is the spiral that's funneling down into the center, non-destructively compressing just right in over here. I'm going to make all this link up to spirals in just a moment, back to the Krystal spiral at the end, if that's what you're here for. But I feel like I should make a very well-versed case for the phi ratio spiral here and how it relates to three-dimensional geometry and the energetics of the charge collapse that Dan Winter talks about. And this is going to relate to our whole universe from Big Bang, if that's the theory you go with, all the way to our universal scale and everything in between. So I got creative with this week, and these are not highly well-drawn spirals, but I saw that I was able to draw that one spiral by connecting the dots between the tricontahedrons that are getting smaller and smaller into the center. So I did one of them, and I was like, well, once you do one, you want to do 5. And of course, this was tricky to do because I'm going from what, we're used to looking at it from a Pentagon spiral going in and just kind of working your way around to looking at it from the square perspective of this view, which Kathara Grid is built off of. So we're looking at the rhombic diamond face. So this spiral that's entering into it is coming from kind of at least this one I'm showing you, from an angle down into the center. Now, this is different from the first golden ratio spiral that I showed you. That one was more like an overlay almost that could be there like this, but now this is really showing you how it relates to the geometric structure of it spiraling into the center. And I really took my time to carefully locate all of these segments at the tricontahedron intersection points so I could go from one to the next. There's blue, black, red, blue, black, red. So there's only 6 of them here. It's a very limited thing. And there's a lot more spirals going on here than what I'm showing you, but I guess I got to start somewhere. So let's, I don't have to spend a lot of time on these, but, you know, I took those and then I rotated them over this way. So we can now get 10 spirals, but there's actually 10 more because in this square view, there's always on the back side, at least from these spirals, there's 10 more on the other side. So we got 20 spirals right here that are mirroring each other. And it's cool to see all 40 of them when we flip it. Now that's quite a cool little design. And it's not super accurately done because I'm just, you know, clicking the curved line basically in this based on the technology that I have to do this. So that's 4 faces of the dodecahedron. Now I said, well, okay, geez, I got 4 more faces to do because I can do the same thing from the side. So we got that braiding going on as I'm connecting the dots, and they don't have to start here. The spiral will have more connection points beyond it, but I'm just basically keeping it within this last tricontahedron. So there we go. These are braiding in. And this one I really liked. This was one of my most favorite views besides the first one, because I could really see the braiding going in, because these are coming in directly from the corners. So there's only 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got 4 braiding going in down towards the center, weaving together, and they're kind of crisscrossing a little bit and braiding up down the middle out along the seam here. So that's another 40 spirals, because we have 10 here and 10 there and 10 there. So let's just put it all together and put them all on there. And as my partner said, my loving partner said, she said, oh, this looks like the most organized plate of spaghetti that she'd ever seen. And it's all in Phi proportion here. And we got the 12 faces of the dodecahedron, as 120 spirals within this that are all connecting the dots, going through all the tricontahedron, weaving their way down into the center. I guess this is my version of the string theory universe, or spaghetti theory universe that we're looking at here. And like I said over here on the left, my little disclaimer is this is a totally simplistic way of looking at it, but it worked with the geometry. And I wish I could have done the line drawings here more precisely. Hey, but you know, we're going to keep going because I wanted to show that really why I'm showing you that is that I really don't know, and this is an open-ended question for people who are into the Kathara Krystal Spiral, like what the spiral, it relates to the octahedron if it does, and it relates to the cube, how it, you know, and I've drawn pictures of this spiraling around, but I'm showing you here exactly with the phi ratio spiral and the implosion, how it relates to these 3-dimensional geometric forms, and that this spiraling pattern will non-destructively infinitely compress towards the center of this form from the square perspective, because it's in the same square orientation as the Kathara grid. It's just not built with that, it's not built with golden ratio scaling, basically. That's what the difference is with the Kathara grid. It's built on the square root of 2. So, and the doubling sequence. So we have, okay, I thought a little creative of this, and I'm going to put these in here too, because I said, well, look, check this out. We have a face of the pyramid. And I said, well, geez, how about if that face of the pyramid, like this little pyramid here, how about if each of those faces actually were a dodecahedron pentagon? So I'm going to take 5-fold symmetry. I'm going to take pentagons. I'm going to put pentagon on each of these faces and make something that really I don't believe has ever been created, at least that I know on Earth. So here it is, a totally new model, and I'll show you this one at the end. It is, this is the spaceship model. So here's the pyramid in red. Okay, I'll walk you through this one slowly. And this is a total creative contraption here that I've got going on. The pyramid's in red. This blue is the base of the pentagon. And these are the stellation of that pentagon, and has 4 pentagons, and these have to crisscross at the bottom. and make an X. So this is the top view. The red is the pyramid. I have to show you this when we stop. There's the pentagons, which are slanted away. They're tilted out like to the sides. And they meet the apex. Everything in this apex meets at the center, and the bases of the pentagons, which are here, make a little tic-tac-toe board at the bottom, right? And all that compressive energy, infinite non-destructive compression energy of the pentagon, here's my little pentagon with the circle in the middle, right? So that is where the funnel is. The red triangle, I don't know if you can see it, but it's in there. I'm rotating it around. It's this edge right here. That's that little wedge shape that's like that on one of those pentagon. And this little shape is now part of this structure, and this base is along the base of the checkerboard that I'm talking, or the tic-tac-toe board. And now I've taken all of that from 4 directions and met it at the apex of the pyramid. This non-destructive infinite compression Dan Winter talks about from 4 places meeting at the top of the pyramid. Now that's pretty awesome, because what is happening at the top of this pyramid is you've got the unification of 4 directions, all compressed, all infinitely at this spot. Now, if that isn't a beacon or some sort of signal being put out into the universe, I don't know what is. So, but that is the golden ratio pyramid. This is not a regular octahedron that's in this here. So I have a few different views for you. Here's the pentagon. You could see that the red base, there it is sloping up to the top of one of the faces. Here's the checkerboard that's created. Those are the 5 pentagon faces at the bottom. It's not the greatest, I did the best I could overlapping and crisscrossing all these little straws and cutting them out with wire. There it is from the side view again. And here is your top view. And so anyway, I'm not sure exactly what this is yet, but I think it's really something interesting. And I don't know, maybe someone will pick it up and run with it. So let's see, I'm about to go into the Phi Yantra. Maybe I'll just save all the sharing of the forms until the end. Let me put them on the side here. I just want everybody to share this again, because it's a video from a little while ago called the Phi Yantra. I think the cover of it looks just like this. This is really, I did end of last summer, and it really paved the way for everything that I just showed you. I didn't even realize I had the golden circles and the way that I work with them with the rest of the form. I didn't know anything about them at the time, but I did discover the infinite compression and squaring the circle within this. So I just want to cover that just a little bit and put it in here. Here's the template that I just showed you of the pyramid. It came from the star cut diagram, is based on the regular 4 circles without any phi ratio, extending the lines out and dividing this edges of the large cube. And then I discovered how phi worked within this square view. And I really think that a lot of sacred geometry that's been presented hasn't really worked the phi ratio into a lot of these other perspectives and views, especially the flower of life one, which a lot of my work points out of how to add that. And then all of a sudden, like I showed, all those views connect together, and I have Metatron's tetraplex, which corrects all the phi ratio forms in that. But here's some of my early math, just looking at the different squares. These are the same squares that I showed you before. And here's the pyramid that I was just talking about. This is based on Kepler's triangle. I believe Jane calls this the most sacred triangle, maybe, something like that. And I actually used Jane's version of pi in this, because right here, what I'm showing is I'm infinitely squaring the circle, which is thought to be, a challenge for a geometer, which it's impossible really for a geometer if you don't use Jane's value for pi, which includes the square root of phi to get 3.144. If you use standard pi, 3.141, you'll never be able to get it an accurate 8 to 8. Let's say the circle circumference is 8, the square perimeter is 8. Well, this is the diagram that then shows you with the square root of phi that matter and spirit, there's no difference between the two. And I'm showing that here in this Phi Yantra diagram, which is all the same stuff I just showed you about the triconta and all that prior, is we're squaring that circle infinitely or down at all levels. So what is that saying from a symbolic perspective? Basically matter and spirit at every single level from this universal to this big bang and quantum level is no difference. Spirit and matter, zero difference, all one. That's what this is saying here, right? And now it's not just one little simple diagram, which is, geometers have been puzzling over for millennia. It's infinite over here, right? It keeps going and going and going. So here's the Kepler's triangle, and I would say it probably, based on my analysis that I just said, turning it into the pyramid is probably one of the most sacred geometry triangles. Okay, we're getting very close to wrapping up. Just wanted to show that there are a few different templates to work with in here that's based off of the 4-petal design, right? Super classic design, foundational to sacred geometry to produce the square view, twofold symmetry, 2 lines of symmetry, or 4 lines of symmetry, octagons, squares, it's all right here. What my work has done with the golden circles is I've incorporated the golden circles, 3 tiers of them into that diagram. And this is the basic starting point where I was able to start to work with all the Platonic solids, especially the phi ratio ones, putting them into the form and building the stellations of the Kepler Poinsot polyhedra and discovering other more obscure star polyhedra within this pattern. And then along came the infinite compression models, which do this. This is basically a more cleaned up version of this one. This is the one I've been showing because this is now introducing the square into these so we can draw the square as we go. And this is the infinite compression version of the golden circle diagram, or infinite explosion version. And it all came from this basic one. So essentially what the golden circles have done, just like they did with the hexagon view of flower of life, seed of life, adding the one golden ratio circle, or all of them in these, will open up a vast amount of possibilities. And I believe that possibly that since the Kathara grid is built off of this, it's either saying that that's completely the only natural pattern that exists out there, and this is the only way we should draw geometry, and all the other forms don't mean anything. They're just distorted, and this is it. Or, or the possibility exists that you add some phi ratio circles to this, and you start to work with a lot more of the potential creation of nature. That's where the conversation lies, really, right? Because I feel like in this presentation that I feel like this is, there might be some math that I imagine someone's going to pull into this in terms of how phi eats itself, or the Fibonacci sequence is, destructive because it eats the number of predecessor, right? But you don't even need numbers here. It's just a scale invariance. It's fractal. It's not about any number eating a previous number. That's, it's not about that. It's like any scale 1 to 1.618 is the only number you need. You just need 1.618 and 1, and that's every scale. So there is no numbers. There's just a ratio. And so what I hope this did is addressing that it does go to the center, and it does fit into the square view, and this is not even a hexagon view. So we have this golden spiral, infinite golden compression. It includes not just one cube and octahedron, but the compounds of 5 of both of those. As I said, creating all those other forms, the tricontahedron, the icosahedron, all those other ones. And then what we have here, I find to be like without phi circles, it's a spiral that's on here. And I really want to know where this spiral is in nature, if it's a natural nature pattern, because if this is the natural spiral, yet many things in our natural world, actually from flowers to galaxies, proportions on our body, if that's all a distortion, then I feel bad about eating apples all of a sudden, and I'm not really that happy to be here because I'm surrounded in a world that has phi proportion around me, and my body and organism and everything about me has phi proportion. And I don't feel like a distortion. So where is this natural pattern showing up in our natural world? And I think it has to do with light. And I don't really see that there's needs to be any exclusion between the two. Why are these just not overlapped with one another? Well, I could see that there is actually, as I say that, possibly some difficulties with that because our squares are not generating at the same distances, right? And earlier in the video, I described how that's the icosahedron in there. And I believe this conversation is going to come down to what is called the phase lock of the icosahedron or something like that. And that is the, distorting of the pattern. But I really believe in my loving heart, mind, body, and soul that there can be peace and harmony still between both of these, and that it's not an either or situation that we're dealing with here. Because if it is an either or situation, and that everything on my right-hand side of my picture here that I just presented thoroughly on is really our distorted universe, then I don't really understand things like this. This is Nassim Harameyn's work that looks at, from a paper that him and his colleagues here has written, and it looks at the Big Bang all the way out to our biological microtubules that are in our cells, and this is us here, all the way out to galactic 1 and 2. I'm not sure what the 1 and 2 are, but the galactic levels, and all the way out to our universal model. So we're going from this very, very billions of times smaller than an atom, quantum level, all the way out to our universe and everything in between. And here's our biology within this. And look at the title of this here: Scale Law for All Organized Matter. Scale Unification, a universal scaling law for organized matter. Phi ratio scaling at all these. And it's close to phi ratio, not exactly, because remember, phi ratio, what I'm showing you in my drawings is probably the most idealized, perfected state of everything. And that is probably not true to nature, right? Because there's a lot of little imperfections that keep it changing and evolving, and it is not static or steady state. It's not really phase lock, basically, because it's continually not even in equilibrium. It's out of equilibrium just for that reason. If it were the isotropic vector model of it, rather than maybe the golden vector model of it that I've been talking about as well, then everything would be the same. And everything is not the same. So these are the type of big questions that I think sacred geometry can lead to, as I'm showing you in my discoveries, because, as I reflected upon this video, I didn't know any of this stuff until I started drawing these shapes. And literally over the past probably couple of years, it really started, or even a year, last March, I've really started to make some breakthroughs. I really started to learn how to work with a phi ratio, and everything you see probably since about March last year that I've been presenting that after that, it's 2021, has been related to that expansion in my perspective from drawing with just regular same size circles to seeing how phi proportions relate to those diagrams. And it really has been the unifying perspective and view, not only from the universal level, but from a unified sacred geometry perspective, as I showed where I pulled out those 3 images in this, of the 3 different patterns, Pentagon view, square view, and hexagon view. I have one little last thing, and then I'll wrap it up. I want to show you on the iPad. It takes a minute to get over on the sharing the screen, but I want to zoom into this so you might get a little sense of the appreciation of just how, at least to me, you might get that appreciation, how magnificent it is to see that scaling as we zoom into the diagram with the golden rectangles on it. Now, I did this with Dan Winter's presentations on the Star Mother. Check that one out. And then I did it with the Star Child, Star Mother video that I did. And this is now from the square view. I did those other ones with the pentagonal and hexagon view. And there's our golden rectangle, remember? This is very important special crossing that happens here. This is just basically another golden rectangle and a larger golden rectangle. And where you crisscross those two lines will go through this diagram and continue to show up crisscrossing forever. Well, I mean, they crisscross at this one little point. And that's the point of why I'm doing this. And as you can see, we're going through all these tricontahedrons. We're going through the rhombic faces, right? That's a rhombic face. At the center of that point that I'm going towards is the crisscrossing point of a icosahedron and dodecahedron edge. And at the heart of that point is an octahedron. Right here in the center of this is an octahedron, and that may be the link for the Kathara grid, because that's the vertice of an icosahedron, and it's part of octahedron, excuse me. The octahedron is the 8-sided face. I'm not sure which I was saying there, but this right here, this point we're going to, is an octahedron, because at that point is one of 5 octahedrons, but this is one of them, and we're going in towards it. And as we go past these golden rectangles, you could see the crisscross. And at some point, my circles have to stop meeting those lines because I can't really fit them in there anymore. So, just picture this as if you are looking at, this is the max extent as I can go. And next time you see this drawing of this golden rectangle, that is very common that we see, and it might even be a Fibonacci one, but this is for sure all golden rectangles here. This crossing here, see, it's going through, look at it, it goes through every golden rectangle, and we'll continue on all the way down to that small scale. So whenever we see this one, we get the picture of that spiral of those cubes that are stacked. Remember I was showing you those stacked cubes that are cube going down? It's a good one to kind of get in mind, the ram's horn effect as it goes around, because that is where it's all going. If there was ever a 0-point horizon, or I'm not exactly sure what the 0-point horizon, where that is in the scale of things, but this is like if it's a halfway point, I'm not sure, but this is the point really of a source, let's just say. But I want to make this clear that that is just one point of source, because every single point I'm just happening to focus there. That's little circle that at that one point is, I could do that over here. See, it's already starting to do that. See, I've got 3 of them, and I can do that there. I could do that there. I can do it over here. I can do it anywhere within this, right? So there was a quote that I had in there on that Nassim Haramein image that basically said that within that one little point, within that one little atom, let's just say, it contains the whole power for the whole universe. And that is essentially, what this diagram is basically saying, that one little point that I showed you at the center, and I'm zooming out and we can keep going, that infinitely is all throughout this model. So these are just all boundaries that I've placed within infinity, basically, these lines that I've shown you here. And I think that's about it. I really appreciate you watching the video. I really hope that it inspires some great conversation. This is never, for me, about a choose your sides or anything like that. I really would love for the geometry to lead the way in my discoveries and present those through me as they are presented through the work that I'm doing with this. And let the geometry, as I often say, telling its own story, speaking for itself, through my limited perspective and understanding, and you have to feel into that and see how that resonates with your understandings, intuitive felt sense. How do the diagrams make you feel? Do you feel uplifted, inspired? Do you feel phase locked? What does the geometry do to you? How do you relate to it? These are all very deep, personal, spiritual questions. And all the iconography that exists out there, as you start to meditate on it or relate to it in the ways that I'm describing, it is going to be activating, working on those seeds within you as sacred geometry that you are, you know, pulling on those heartstrings, making that music, making you sing, feeling that energy in life. And it doesn't really matter what perspective of view or what angle that is from, because it's your unique perspective, and that is you. You are that unique perspective. Okay, everybody, much love and appreciation. Check out my stuff on Patreon. Please subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in learning to draw these, check out my apprentice programs on my website. All right, much love, peace, everybody. Bye-bye.